Imagine standing on a quiet beach in the early hours of the morning, the cool ocean breeze brushing against your face and the rhythmic sound of waves crashing softly against the shore. The world feels calm, peaceful even. But on December 1st, 1948, on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia, the silence of dawn carried a chilling secret. There, lying neatly against the sand, with his head propped against the seawall, was the body of a man no one recognized. He was dressed immaculately, a pressed suit, polished shoes, and a clean shirt. His posture seemed oddly relaxed, almost as though he had fallen asleep by the water. But when bystanders approached, it became clear. He was not asleep. He was dead. What made this discovery so haunting wasn't just the death itself, but the mystery surrounding it. He carried no wallet, no identification, no personal belongings that could reveal who he was. Even the tags on his clothing had been carefully cut out, erasing any clue about his origins. A man who appeared out of nowhere and now vanished into the folds of history with no name and no past. The authorities were baffled, but the deeper they searched, the stranger the case became. This is the story of the Somerton Man, a tale that has puzzled investigators, confounded scientists, and haunted the imagination of the public for over 75 years. A mystery wrapped in codes, espionage theories, and forensic riddles. Tonight, we dive deep into one of the most perplexing unsolved cases in the history of true crime. The police investigation began immediately. Witnesses reported that they had seen the man the night before sitting in the same spot, motionless, as if lost in thought. No one imagined that hours later he would be lifeless. An autopsy revealed something even stranger. His organs showed signs of poisoning, likely a fast-acting digitalis-type poison, but no trace of the substance could ever be found in his body. It was as if death itself had erased the evidence. To make matters more mysterious, his pockets contained unusual items: a used bus ticket, a train ticket that had never been used, a pack of chewing gum, matches, and a comb. But none of these explained who he was or how he had died. Then came the discovery that would forever brand this case with an aura of enigma. Hidden in a small pocket sewn into the waistband of his trousers was a tiny rolled-up scrap of paper. On it, in neat letters, were the words Tamám Shud. Translated from Persian, it means ended or finished. This phrase came from a book of poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. But how did this piece of paper end up hidden in his clothing? And why those words, ended? The police scoured the country for leads. Astonishingly, they found a copy of the Rubaiyat in a man's car abandoned near the scene. Inside the book, they discovered a series of cryptic letters written in pencil, almost like a code, as well as a local phone number. To this day, no one has been able to fully decipher the code. Experts, intelligence officers, and amateur cryptographers alike have tried, yet it remains an unsolved puzzle. And as for the phone number, it led investigators to a woman known only as Jestyn. Now here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Jestyn, whose real name was Joe Thompson, lived only a short distance away from where the Somerton Man was found. When police showed her his plastered death mask, she reportedly nearly fainted, though she denied ever knowing him. But suspicion hung over her like a shadow. Some believed she was lying. Others suggested she was protecting a dangerous secret. Was the Somerton Man a spy? After all, this was 1948, the height of Cold War paranoia. Australia was a hub of intelligence activity, and Adelaide was near a military base. The coded note, the deliberate removal of clothing tags, the mysterious woman, all pointed to a possible espionage connection. And yet, no agency ever stepped forward to claim him. But the story didn't end there. Decades later, DNA testing began offering new hope. In 2022, scientists revealed that the man was most likely Charles Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne who had mysteriously disappeared in the 1940s. The DNA matched with living relatives, and for the first time, the Somerton Man seemed to have a name. But even with this revelation, the questions only deepened. Why was he in Adelaide? What caused his death? And what was his connection to Jestyn, whose son Robin bore an uncanny resemblance to Webb? Some researchers even suggested Robin could have been his child. To this day, the case refuses to close. Each answer brings new questions. Each clue deepens the mystery. The Somerton Man isn't just a cold case. It's a mirror reflecting humanity's endless fascination with the unknown. A man who arrived without a past, left without an explanation, and continues to haunt the present with the silence of his secrets. And so, as we unravel the fragments of his life, we're left with the haunting words found in his pocket. Tamám Shud. Ended. But for us, the mystery is far from over.
The words Tamám Shud may have suggested an ending, but for investigators, it was only the beginning of a labyrinthine puzzle. The more they dug into the case, the more elusive the truth became. Imagine the frustration of detectives in 1948, armed with the body of a man dressed like a gentleman, mysterious scraps of paper, and whispers of espionage, yet not a single person willing to come forward and claim him. In fact, one of the most baffling elements of the case was his clothing. The suit he wore was well-tailored, yet it bore no labels. Every identifying tag had been cut out with surgical precision. Why? Was he trying to erase his identity, or was someone else erasing it for him? The shoes he wore were shined to perfection, far too clean for someone who had supposedly been wandering the city. Witnesses recalled that they had seen him on the evening before his death, slumped against the seawall, barely moving. A couple walking by even joked that he looked too still, but they never imagined he was already dying. The autopsy raised even more red flags. His spleen was 3 times its normal size. His stomach was congested with blood, and the doctor believed he had ingested a powerful poison. Yet bizarrely, no trace of poison was ever detected in his system. In an era without today's advanced toxicology, some suggested that he may have been killed with a substance so rare, so exotic, that it left no chemical trace. If that were true, it sounded eerily like the work of professional intelligence operatives. The presence of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam added an almost theatrical twist. That tiny slip of paper with Tamám Shud had been neatly hidden, almost like a message meant for those who would find him. And when the actual book was traced to a local man's abandoned car, it contained what appeared to be a cipher, a strange series of letters grouped together in no known language. Codebreakers speculated that it might have been a form of shorthand or an encryption used in espionage. Even the U.S. Navy cryptalysis unit attempted to crack it, but they too admitted defeat. To this day, the code remains unsolved. Then came the link to Jestyn. When detectives followed the phone number written in the book, they found themselves at the doorstep of a nurse living in Adelaide. Her name was Jo Thompson, but she was known to Jestyn to her friends. When she was shown the death mask of the Somerton Man, her reaction was chilling. She turned pale, nearly collapsed, and refused to explain her reaction. Officially, she told police she had no idea who he was. But privately, officers noted that she seemed deeply unsettled. Whispers began to spread. Could she have been connected to him romantically? Some even speculated that her son Robin bore striking similarities to the dead man, particularly in his rare dental features and a distinct ear shape. If true, it would mean the Somerton Man had left behind not only a mystery, but also a bloodline. The spy theory grew stronger as the years went by. Adelaide was not just any Australian city. It was a hub of military and intelligence activity in the late 1940s. The nearby Woomera test range was a top-secret weapons facility used jointly by Britain and Australia. It was exactly the kind of place where espionage activity thrived. Could the Somerton Man have been a spy sent to gather secrets? Was he discovered, silenced, and left as a message? Others believed the mystery was more personal. Some argued he may have been a jilted lover, arriving in Adelaide to confront Jestyn. Maybe the scrap of poetry symbolized the end of a relationship, not just a life. After all, the Rubaiyat itself is a book about fate, mortality, and the fleeting nature of life. Perhaps his death was his own final act, a poetic exit scripted with haunting precision. Yet the evidence never fully supported suicide. His polished shoes, the absence of vomit at the scene, the deliberate removal of labels, all suggested an organized hand at work. If it was suicide, it was staged in a way that defied common sense. If it was murder, it was executed with chilling skill. As decades passed, the Somerton Man became more than a cold case. He became a legend. Amateur sleuths obsessed over the cipher, genealogists dug through family trees, and journalists retold his story in countless documentaries and books. Theories ranged from Soviet spies to secret love affairs, from exotic poisons to elaborate hoaxes. Each retelling added new details, new possibilities, but never a definitive answer. And then, in recent years, the story took an unexpected turn. Modern science brought tools the 1948 investigators could only dream of. Genetic genealogy, the same method that helped solve the Golden State Killer case, was applied to the Somerton Man. Hair preserved from his death mask was carefully analyzed, DNA extracted, and compared to vast family databases. Finally, after decades of speculation, researchers announced that the Somerton Man was likely Carl or Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker from Melbourne. On the surface, this seemed like the final breakthrough. At last, the man had a name. But as with everything in this case, the answers only led to more questions. Webb had disappeared in the 1940s, estranged from his wife, with no record of his movements afterward. Why did he travel to Adelaide? How did he die? And how did a man with no known ties to espionage end up entangled in a web of mystery? Even with his name restored, the central enigma of the case remained unsolved. Poison or not? Spy or not? Murder? Suicide, or accident? The fragments of truth seemed to slip away the closer investigators came to the finish line.
But even with Carl Webb's name attached, the haunting questions refused to fade. Investigators and historians quickly realized that identifying him was only half the battle. The real mystery wasn't simply who he was. It was why he ended up dead on Somerton Beach under such bizarre circumstances. For one thing, Carl Webb wasn't just an ordinary man. He was an electrical engineer, a man who worked with precision instruments and tools, and someone who may have had access to substances and technologies not commonly available to the public at the time. Could this knowledge have played a role in his death? Some argue that if anyone could have orchestrated a method of poisoning that left no trace, it would be a man of his background. Others weren't so sure. They pointed to the bitter separation from his wife.
Divorce records hinted at a troubled marriage, and Webb may have been in Adelaide searching for her or perhaps another family connection. But then, why the secrecy? Why remove all labels from his clothing? Why carry no wallet? And why end up with a coded message in his pocket? These aren't the behaviors of a man simply running from heartbreak. They suggest a calculated attempt to vanish, or to be made to vanish. As researchers pored over his family tree, more strange links appeared. Some relatives were tied to unusual circumstances, others lived quiet, ordinary lives, but none provided the missing link explaining how Carl Webb's journey ended with such a theatrical mystery. His story resisted closure, almost as though the man himself wanted to remain hidden behind a curtain of speculation. And then there's Jestyn, the woman at the center of it all. To this day, her silence speaks louder than any words could. She denied knowing him, but her fear in her eyes when she saw his death mask said otherwise. Why was she so terrified? If she had nothing to hide, why not simply admit to recognizing him? Was she protecting herself, her family, or perhaps something bigger, something involving national security? Her son Robin only deepened the intrigue. Many independent researchers pointed out uncanny resemblances between Robin and the Somerton Man, the rare shape of the outer ear, the dental anomalies, the same distinctive look in their features. If Robin was indeed Webb's child, it would explain Jestyn's reaction, but it would also raise the stakes. Could the entire mystery boil down to a secret relationship, a hidden child, and a desperate attempt to erase the man from existence? And then there's the coded text in the Rubaiyat. It still taunts those who try to solve it. Some believe it was a personal shorthand, something only Webb himself could interpret. Others insist it's a spy code, possibly linked to the Cold War era, when Australia was becoming a critical player in intelligence sharing with the United States and Britain. The proximity of the Woomera rocket range only fuels the suspicion. What better cover could a spy have than posing as an ordinary traveler, slipping into Adelaide unnoticed until fate, or betrayal, caught up with him? And then comes the most chilling thought of all. What if Webb was not the victim, but the player in his own final act? The Rubaiyat is a book obsessed with fate, mortality, and endings. The slip of paper reading Tamám Shud could have been his deliberate farewell. If so, then the Somerton Man wasn't just a victim of mysterious forces, but the author of his own haunting legacy. Still, the puzzle refuses to align. If it was suicide, where did he obtain such an untraceable poison? If it was murder, who had the resources and motive to execute it so flawlessly? If it was espionage, why leave behind a trail of clues instead of erasing all traces completely? Each theory answers one piece of the riddle, but leaves a dozen others unsolved. Over time, the Somerton Man became more than a case file. He became a cultural phenomenon. His story inspired novels, documentaries, podcasts, and endless online debates. Amateur detectives created entire communities dedicated to cracking the code, piecing together timelines, and debating whether Carl Webb truly was the man on the beach. The case blurred the line between history and legend, between fact and folklore. And here's what makes the Somerton Man so unforgettable. He embodies the essence of mystery itself. Every attempt to solve his case ends with more speculation. Every breakthrough reveals new shadows. Even with DNA, even with modern forensics, the story refuses to give us a clean conclusion.
In an age when science can solve decades-old crimes, the Somerton Man laughs from beyond the grave, daring us to try harder. Think about it. How many cases from 1948 still grip the imagination of millions? How many forgotten men in history have become immortal, not because of what they achieved in life, but because of the secrets they carried into death? As we reflect on his story, we are left with one undeniable truth. Whether spy, lover, or tragic soul, the Somerton Man has achieved something rare. He has outlived the limits of his own mortality, becoming a riddle that may never be solved, a symbol of the mysteries that define the human condition itself. And so, the waves of Somerton Beach continue to crash, just as they did on that December morning. The tide erases footprints, but it cannot erase memory. The sand buries secrets, but it cannot bury questions. Somewhere out there lies the missing piece of this puzzle, waiting for the one person who might finally fit it into place. Until then, the Somerton Man remains exactly what he was found to be, an enigma.
The Somerton Man is more than a file in the archives. He is more than a cold case that has haunted Australia for decades. He has become a mirror, reflecting not only our obsession with answers, but also our fear of the unknown. When Carl Webb's identity was first floated through DNA research, many believed the story had reached its conclusion. Finally, a name for the nameless. A man who was no longer a ghost. Yet the supposed resolution only sparked new debates. If Webb was indeed the Somerton Man, why had he ended up there, stripped of his identity, his life cut short? The simplest of questions still remain unanswered. Let's break it down with clarity. Was it suicide? If he ended his own life, how did he obtain such a rare poison that left no trace? Why remove all identification, and why leave behind a mysterious coded note that only deepened the riddle? Was it murder? If someone killed him, who had the power and precision to do it so cleanly that no forensic evidence survived? Why would anyone go to such lengths to erase him, yet also leave tantalizing breadcrumbs in the form of the rubaiyat and the phone number linked to Jestyn? Was it espionage? The timing fits: the Cold War, the Woomera rocket range, and Australia's increasing role in global intelligence. Webb's technical background as an engineer fits too. But if he was a spy, why was his body staged so openly, almost theatrically, as though daring the world to guess the story? The truth is simple, yet frustrating. We do not know, and perhaps we never will. But here's where the story transcends one man's life and death. The Somerton Man represents something universal. He embodies the human need for closure, the way we chase answers even when they slip through our fingers. His story shows us that even in a world dominated by technology, science, and endless data, there are still mysteries that resist explanation. And maybe that's why his case continues to fascinate us. Because deep down, we don't just want to know who he was, we want to know why. We want the story to make sense, to fit neatly into a box, to close the chapter once and for all. But life doesn't always give us that gift. Sometimes it leaves us with riddles that cannot be solved, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable reality that the world is far stranger than we imagine. 75 years have passed since that December morning in 1948 when the waves rolled gently onto Somerton Beach and revealed a man who should have been forgotten. Instead, he became unforgettable. His still form sparked questions that echoed through generations, and his silence spoke louder than any words could. And so, the legacy of the Somerton Man is not in the answers, but in the pursuit. In the way people across the world, from detectives to scientists to amateur sleuths, have united in curiosity. in the way his story has shaped forensic science, inspired cold case investigations, and proven that no mystery is ever truly dead. So the next time you hear the ocean, think of him, the man with no name, no past, and perhaps no future. A man whose final message was just 2 words, Tamám Shud. It is finished. But maybe, just maybe, it isn't. Because as long as people like you continue to wonder, continue to question, and continue to seek the truth, the Somerton Man lives on. Not just as a forgotten body on a beach, but as a timeless enigma, reminding us that some secrets are never meant to die. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of history's most baffling true crime mysteries. If you found yourself captivated by the story of the Somerton Man, don't forget to like this video, share your own theories in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most haunting unsolved cases. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, not every mystery wants to be solved.